Hello, I'm Michelle Marvig of peaceville.com.au. Are you like me? Do you have a significant stash of fabric? I have lengths of fabric, I have scraps of fabric, I have fat quarters and jelly rolls. Now jelly rolls are 2.5 inch wide. Let me show you my handy template set designed for cutting those 2.5 inch strips into lots of handy shapes. The strip set is called the Scrap, Stash and Strip and comes in 3 pieces. So template A cuts a square and a rectangle. And if we look at the quilt that's behind me, it's called Jimbaran Stars. This entire quilt has been made from 2.5 inch strips, right down to the binding. So template A was used to cut the squares that form the checkerboard through the quilt. It was also used to cut the rectangles of background. Template B is a 1/4 square triangle, and when we cut with a 2.5 inch strip it gives our straight of grain on the outside edge and 2 bias on the upper edges, and it goes to the top of the outer star point between the 2 parallelograms. Template C cuts 3 shapes. In this quilt we use the whole parallelogram and it makes those outer star points. And we can turn it over, giving us a left and right. And the other end of this shape does a 1/2 square triangle, and it actually makes the star points of the inner star. The other shape on this particular piece is a trapezoid. So 3 shapes off template C. Very handy, very useful in many quilts. Let me demonstrate how to cut with these templates. If we start cutting with our simple shape, the square, template A, in fact all of the templates, come with a solid line, which is our finished line or a seam line, and the dotted lines are actually our cutting lines or placement lines. So for this one I find it easier to cut a square. I have placed my strip down on my cutting mat, so it is wrong sides together, and I have already trimmed the selvage off. But I'm going to place template A down and place the dotted line past that middle solid line onto my strip so that it's lined up now on 2 raw edges, the dotted on the lower raw edge, and I can then cut the right side. That's a square. The rectangle is obviously very easy. We just line the whole lot up and then we can cut. But if I jump to template C, which does our 1/2 square triangle, our trapezoid and a parallelogram. So the 1/2 square triangle is on the end of the template, so I find that solid line and then the dotted line past that I'm now going to place on the straight cut end of my strip. And I'm now going to cut the angle. May I just say that's a little bit awkward because of the camera. Now, so we've cut one, we don't have a straight end to line up for the second. Flip the template over and you'll find that the dotted line will line up on the base. The angled edge lines up with the angled edge of the ruler, and we can now trim the far side. So that gives us 4 triangles, and yes, we do have tails and flat ends, but they actually work together fine when we're sewing our pieces up. We've just already got our dog ears trimmed off. So that's our 1/2 square triangles. So we are now back to a straight edge. So if we wish to cut a trapezoid, which we used in the SSS tote bag, we find that solid line, and again then locate the dotted line past that shape, which puts us on the straight edge, and we can now cut that angled edge. So what happens now is, because we've cut this with wrong sides together, you actually end up with a left and right unit. So depending upon the pattern, you might decide if you need all of them cut in one direction, so therefore you would place your fabrics all right side up or all wrong side up. Or if you need a left and right unit, make sure that they are paired with wrong sides together to cut. So now the second trapezoid, we haven't got our straight edge to line up again. So now find that dotted line again, place that on the bottom raw edge until you line up that long angled edge. And when it does, we do have a little bite missing there, but our blade's straight and it goes straight up that edge in order to cut another pair of trapezoids. Now the final shape with template C, we actually want to cut a parallelogram. However, you wouldn't know I ever owned a fabric shop. I'm first going to cut a half square triangle so that then that is a usable 2.5 inch square for another project. Wait a minute, that might be a usable 2.5 inch triangle for another project. So I'll pop that on my pile. Now, the parallelogram is simply going to sit down on the entire width of fabric, and we can cut. There's our parallelogram. Now actually again, with a parallelogram, you do have a left and right unit, so you need to know if you want all of your shapes to go in one direction or if you need the mirror images. Mirror images, wrong sides together to cut, all one direction. Make sure all fabric is either placed right side or wrong side when you cut. The final shape is a quarter square triangle, and again, because the angle is the same, we can now cut that triangle from the balance of that strip. If that was a whole strip and I needed a lot of these, I would go from the base to the top, to the base, to the top, so that we can cut. So there's our shapes, parallelograms, trapezoids, half square triangles, a square, and the one shape I didn't cut today was a rectangle. Every template set that you buy actually does come with printed instructions, so you don't have to constantly fire up the computer. We do have these for you included in every set. To give you a little bit more inspiration about what you can do with these templates, this quilt I have called True Directions. It was made from a jelly roll of Tula Pink's True Colours fabric range. So as you can see, these are the parallelograms that have been used to make the arrow points. Then we have the quarter square triangle at the top and the half square triangles at the base. So this does have a different size in there in that background. It's not all cut from 2.5 inch strips. We briefly discussed what was happening with Jimbaran Stars earlier. The entire quilt is made from 2.5 inch strips, just changing up the shape that we cut using the templates, and then taking it to another level, you can also strip piece your fabrics together before you cut with the templates. So I have called this cushion Split Chevron. So I've strip pieced the sections before I've then cut those with the chevron template, cut those maybe with the parallelogram, and they're all parallelograms through here. Offset them, i.e. the split chevron, and it's a fun little way to use up even smaller pieces of your stash. Hopefully this has given you some inspiration to maybe reduce that stash that you've got. Good luck, girls and boys. Happy stitching!